For the first video in this series, I'm going to be covering double black runs from only 3 mountains to start, those being Winter Park, Copper, and A Basin, all in Colorado. Throughout, I'll also be rating these 3 mountains based on their quantity of double black runs, how fun they are, and as well as how challenging they are. Avid skiers of these mountains may notice I'm not covering every single double black run from these mountains, and there's a few reasons for that. For one, I think it just takes far too long, especially with some of these mountains that have upwards of 10 double black runs. I just couldn't cover them all in this one video, at least not in the depth I would want to. Additionally, frankly, one of these mountains in particular, I haven't built up the courage yet to give every single one of their double black runs a try, and you can bet that one's going to rate pretty damn high on the challenge scale. Finally, and unfortunately, I've had my batteries die on almost every day I've gone out this year. If you are a new skier looking to do GoPro videos or snowboarder or anything that takes a lot of time to film your videos, please bring at least 1 or 2 extra batteries. Don't get screwed like I did. Alright, let's get into our first mountain we'll be covering, that being Copper Mountain, and it's over 20 double black runs.
Oh yeah, not so bad at all. This is a double? Hardly.
Now, of course, the day I went to Copper Mountain was the day my battery decided to have the least amount of charge, despite saying 100%, and the day I did the most double black runs, so far this season at least, and got, well, 2 of them. Starting with Resolution Bowl.
This is a double? Hardly.
I won't say it disappointed me, but at the very least it was less than I expected it, mostly in challenge. It was still very fun and great snow, but that was more due to the weather that day. Mostly, it just didn't have that steepness that I was looking for, especially in a double black, and the amount of it was quite limited before it hit a runoff that was more just typical black diamond, even blue, honestly, in steepness. Spalding Bowl, however, absolutely did have that steepness that I was looking for, and there was quite a lot of it as well. Spalding Bowl also had many drop-in points. Depending on weather, for us, there was only a few open, but the potential there to rerun that over and over and over again and still get a new experience each time is really high with Spalding Bowl. Now, there are quite a lot of double blacks that we didn't get around to. Unfortunately, Tucker Mountain was almost entirely closed, save for a cat track down. Copper Bowl was also closed. I'm sure those will open soon, though. The snow has been amazing as of late. But one that I can comment on that I've done in the past and had just an amazing time with is Black Bear and Free Fall Glade south of the Alpine Lift. While these aren't exceptionally difficult or anything like the kind of steepness you would find in Christmas Tree Run at Steamboat or some of these other tree runs that we'll get into later in this video, it still is so much fun with tight trees and plenty of steepness, maybe just not the highest amount, but should be enough to satisfy any adrenaline junkies out there. Okay, now let's get into rating Copper Mountain's double black diamond runs. For quantity, I mean, they have to be a 10 out of 10. They have an absurd amount. And while some of these would no doubt not be double black runs if you were to put them at another resort, they still do qualify in my book. They still have those moments of intense steepness. And for that reason, they get max points for quantity. As regards to fun factor, I think they're like a 8.5 out of 10. They are a ton of fun. Copper Mountain in general is one of the best in the state. The only thing is that drive is hell, but aside from that, fun factor, you can't get much higher than Copper. And difficulty, I'm going to put it like a 6, 7 out of 10. I mean, they're still double blacks, they're not anything to scoff at, but they do lack some. The next mountain we're going to look at is Winter Park, and they're limited but high quality double black runs. I think the phrase that best describes the Winter Park double black diamond runs is quality over quantity. There's only 6, all on Mary Jane's side, and a little asterisk here. I am leaving out the Vasquez Cirque. It is an excellent terrain. I've only done it a couple times, but it's been a ton of fun each time. The thing is, there's quite a lot of effort involved in getting out there, either via hike or snowcat, and the terrain isn't open all that often, so I'm going to maybe have to do a whole separate video on it, but for this video, just focusing on the chutes, and the chutes are as good as they come. The steepness is frankly insane at some points. You can see there's quite a few areas where we started off near a hole in the wall and just kept drifting to the left as we saw the terrain, how tight it was, and to be fair, coverage wasn't great. You will have better chances at a good run on these chutes when there is more coverage, when there isn't rocks and tree heads poking out, especially given how tight some of these areas are. It really limits your turns to maybe 1 or 2 different tracks. I mean, it is scary limited. Frankly, though, a major reason I'm such a fan of these chutes isn't the chutes themselves, but it's the trees immediately after. They're rather tight with good steepness, but they're spaced out enough where you can get some really good turns in there, especially with good conditions. Ours were okay. Could have been a little bit better, but I mean, beggars can't be choosers. Okay, as far as rating Winter Park's double black diamonds, starting with quantity, obviously they're lacking. They only have six, they're all in a fairly tight area. Again, we're excluding Vasquez Cirque for this rating. But considering all this, I'm going to have to give them like a 6 out of 10, I think feels appropriate. The amount of variability in the shoots they have makes it really easy to run them back and get new experiences each time. But it's not like you could be doing these shoots the whole day, I don't think. So, yeah, 6 out of 10 for quantity. As far as fun rating, I'm rating them a 9 out of 10. I love these runs, and specifically the trees after are just so much fun. It makes each run on these shoots, it feels like a whole experience unto itself. Entirely unique from almost anything on the mountain. Eagle Wind is actually quite similar, especially the trees after, but I'll be making a whole video just on Eagle Wind. It really deserves it. And finally, difficulty, I think it has to be a 9 out of 10. These runs are crazy steep. They have very limited options for turn lanes, especially on some of these, particularly hole in the wall. But snow conditions as well can have a huge impact on difficulty. For us, there was trees and rocks poking out everywhere. It can make it very difficult to get around and navigate those steeper, tight areas. But even in perfect conditions, you're still going to get your heart racing on these runs. They are no cakewalk. Last but certainly not least, let's take a look at A Basin, also known as the Legend. I think one of the best things about A Basin, just like Copper, is just how many double black runs they have. Whether it's on the Pally lift, which in that general area has about 20 double black runs just on its own, to the east wall and the many chutes above it, there is endless choice for somebody looking to get their double black runs in. Additionally, if you haven't guessed yet, A Basin is the mountain that has many runs that I just haven't gotten the guts up yet to try. Many of those are those chutes on the east wall, but specifically it's the steep gullies, which just even driving past looks absolutely absurd. I'd love to do it one day, but I'm going to have to work on my craft a little bit more before attempting that one. As far as the Pally lift, what you saw in the video was largely from East Avenue going into Pally Main Street, which is the eventual route of most of the double black runs under the Pally lift. But my God, these runs are so much fun. And I think a large part of that is in part due to what makes a lot of the runs at A Basin so much fun is because of the increased difficulty of a lot of these, you naturally have a lot more experienced skiers and snowboarders, which means the moguls are just beautifully made, which means they have just incredible flow in between them. It's really easy to find a line and be able to just stick with it through, if not the whole run, the majority of the run. And before you know it, you're most of the way down. Getting into specific ratings for A Basin, starting with quantity, just like Copper, has to be a 10. They just have an absolutely absurd amount, more than you could ever hope to do in a single day or even two, really. They are phenomenal in that category. As far as the fun factor, I think I'd put him at like a 9.5 or a 10. It's one of my favorite mountains in the state. A good reason for that is just how well the moguls are formed. There's also great groomed terrain as well. That's for a different video. They have everything a skier could really want, I think, when it comes to having just fun skiing that is admittedly a little bit more on the difficult side. So maybe not so great for beginners. Just a little asterisk there. But once you get up to that level, I cannot recommend it enough. It is a ton of fun. And then finally for difficulty, I think it also has to be a 10 out of 10. It is insanely difficult. A lot of these runs I think would match up with most of the more difficult runs in the state. As far as steepness or terrain, it really has it all. The chutes along the east wall can be incredibly tight at some of these openings. The fact that you have to do a hike up and traverse across along this incredibly steep face for some of those chutes is also pretty intimidating. And then, yeah, the steep gullies just outside of the terrain where you actually have to hike back, they look, well, live up to their name, I suppose. All right, so to recap, both Copper and A Basin came in with max amount for quantity of double black runs. They have a crazy amount. Now, granted, Copper's double blacks may not be considered double blacks at, say, A Basin or even Mary Jane at Winter Park, but they still count, right? They're still well within that steepness range to be considered double blacks, I think. As far as for fun, I had A Basin at number 1, then Winter Park, then Copper. Honestly, though, you could have all of these tied. I think I just rated them a little bit differently just so we could have somebody in first place that's not just tied for everything. But I also feel, though, that A Basin is the most fun, ultimately. Mary Jane at Winter Park definitely has some of those same elements, or Eagle Wind, where with this difficult terrain, you have some naturally better skiers and snowboarders going on, so it has a little bit easier to work with moguls that can be really bouncy and fun. It adds a huge amount of fun to those, but I think A Basin has those in the highest quantity, which is why I'm putting it number 1. And finally, for difficulty, I had A Basin leading the pack. Not surprising. That's the one mountain where still has quite a few runs. I haven't got around to trying yet, hope too soon, but still, admittedly, scare the shit out of me a little bit. But then in second is Winter Park, and then Copper, which, again, doesn't have the most difficult, but admittedly, there's quite a few there that I haven't tried yet as well that could absolutely change that rating. Just based on what I've experienced, it wasn't the most hair-raising double blacks I'd done this year or in past years. So, who knows, that might change. I still need to get a look at Tucker Mountain. It looks incredibly fun. So, I'll have to maybe do an update if anything changes there. Alright, if you've made it this far, I would really appreciate a like and subscribe. This is by far my longest video. Most ambitious thing I've probably attempted. I hope it was at least helpful to some people. Overall, it was just really fun to do. I love doing these videos, and to have people watching is just so cool. So, yeah, really appreciate the support. Feel free to comment or questions or anything. I love the interaction, but yeah, hope you have a great ski season. We'll see you out there.